Good morning, everyone. This is Leader to Leader, and it's our inaugural episode of video, so bear with us. This will be fun. My name is Joshua Reeves. I'm the president of GBA Builders, and today we have a special guest, Kirk Hardcastle, who will introduce himself in a moment. And today, he is going to take rapid-fire, real-world questions on Leader to Leader from young and up-and-coming leaders in the AEC industry. So with that, Kirk, welcome.
Thank you, Joshua.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Kirk Hardcastle. I'm the president of a company called LeaderScope. We do executive development and manager training and development. We've been doing it for 25 years all over the world. I'm also a strategy consultant for businesses. I'm an adjunct professor in the past at Rockhurst University teaching strategic management and marketing management, and I'm also an executive coach.
Awesome. Welcome. So our first guest today is Taylor Glass. Welcome, Taylor.
Thank you.
So here's the ground rules.
Okay.
Introduce yourself, a little bit about yourself, what you do, and then we're going to ask Kirk a question for young and up and coming leaders.
Okay.
Of which you are one.
Sounds good.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Good.
I am Taylor Glass. I'm a process architect in our life sciences buildings group. And I work a lot with our clients one-on-one to develop concepts and site master plans for pharmaceuticals and different drug therapies that'll come out over the next 5 to 10 years.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then on top of that, I do a lot with training and standards and onboarding of our new employees in our buildings group as well. So my question today is, as a young leader, I have not been through a lot of the formal training that a lot of our higher level leaders have. And there's been several instances where I've run into scenarios where having more information on how to deal with difficult personalities or conflict management would have helped me a lot. How can I get myself or ask for trainings like that? And or do you have any specifically that you recommend?
Well, as we transition from peers who are technical specialists or experts in some proficiency into a completely different role, where we're no longer merely required to do the work, but now we have to manage other people doing the work, different kinds of conflicts arise. You know, when you're in the weeds doing the work with peers, the conflicts that arise can be personality conflicts, they can be disputes over how to conduct the work, stuff like that. But it's a different dynamic than when you're dealing with somebody that either you report to or that reports to you. Mm-hmm. Then the personalities really have to go to the wayside. I mean, we're all individuals, but the focus really needs to be on bringing clarity to what the expectations of the work are. Mm-hmm. And what is difficult for us, especially if we get promoted to manage people that we used to work as peers with, is the relationship now changes. Yeah. The professional relationship changes, but the personal relationship changes too. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I find most helpful in that regard, and that other managers that I've worked with have found, is that really clearly categorizing and compartmentalizing the relationship between the personal, when you're at work, talking about work, doing the work, creating expectations for what the work must be, and then the personal relationships outside of work. I try not to intermingle those. If you can keep them compartmentalized and separate, you can handle personal disputes, and I even physically try to remove it from the workplace. If there's conflict or a clash or some difficulty or misunderstanding, miscommunication that causes hurt feelings, stuff like that, I just say, let's take that offline. Let's focus on the work while we're at work. Get the clutter and distraction out of the context of work, and let's go have a drink or a cup of coffee or lunch or something off-site, and let's deal with the personal conflict. You did this, that affected how I feel, it made me knee-jerk respond in emotional ways, and so you can deal with that separately. That's always helpful. The compartmentalizing of those things matters.
Yeah.
Even the good stuff. I mean, friendship stuff, loyalties that exist among peers that can't be expressed when you've got a reporting relationship because it looks like favoritism.
Mm-hmm.
Even those kind of need to be kept separate.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a personal relationship with this guy. We have breakfast every couple of weeks, regretfully, but but I try to keep that separate from when I work with him. And even in those breakfasts, when we talk about work and we talk about management challenges and we talk about strategic complexities, we talk about that. And then we'll say, okay, I mean, what we don't do often enough in work is give those verbal signals of what we're talking about when. So we leave those overlaps real cloudy and uncertain, and that just messes people up. It messes us up. We don't really know how to respond emotionally. Am I talking about work? Am I talking about myself? Am I talking about your feelings? What are we talking about here? So I just real articulately distinguish where the focus of any activity is. Is this a work activity? Is it an interpersonal activity? For how long? Why, when, where? Just bring clarity to that so that you eliminate all that confusion.
That is an excellent thing for you and me because just clarifying, hey, let's focus on the work at hand before we start talking about the fun of life.
Yeah.
And I need to do that too. So apparently that's not just young leadership stuff. That's everybody's leadership stuff.
Yeah, it's something we struggle. When you look at work dynamics, when people organize around any activity, they can organize socially, they can organize competitively, politically, cooperatively, but we're not robots. So if you start a meeting and everybody comes into the room and you say, let's get down to business, and there's no social interaction at all, it's kind of difficult for people. That's cold. It's inhuman, actually. And I've worked for people who do that. You come into a conference room and they go, okay, you're here. Now, first item on the agenda, and it's like, whoa, wait, hold on a second, So what I usually try to do is we talk casually for a few minutes. Hey, how's your dad? I heard he was sick. What's your kid doing? Here's where I'm going on vacation. And then we transition. We say, okay, it's great to catch up with everybody. Let's start the meeting.
Sure.
And that sets a delineation point so that we all know we're human beings. We can have a nice, interrelationship conversation, but now we're going to set personal stuff aside and we're going to act as professional peers or colleagues.
Perfect. So, welcome, Lucas. So the ground rules are you're going to introduce yourself real quick and then present a up-and-coming leadership question to Kirk. This is Kirk Hardcastle from LeaderScope.
Hey.
So does that kind of make sense?
And then we have a cage match.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
So go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll get right to it.
Yeah, I'm Lucas Rosenbaum. I'm a project engineer in the Roadways group here at GBA.
Did you just say Road Rage Group?
Roadways group.
Roadways. Thank you.
You never know.
6 of 1.
And been here for about 5 years, so kind of moving into that leadership role right now. So this is perfect.
Perfect.
The question I had for you was, Kirk, was what type of advice would you give to an upcoming leader like myself about communicating with your team, which might span over multiple generations?
How many people report to you?
I've got 4 right now, but so a smaller group at the moment.
What people want when they work is clarity in expectations. And I run into a lot of people, especially over the last 10 or 15 years, that complain about generational differences and preferences. They talk poorly about younger people's commitment to the integrity of the work. It's the I generation, or me generation, or millennials need special treatment, or Gen X people need special consideration. And I've just not found that to be true. I think we make assumptions about other people on the basis of all kinds of differences, every kind of cultural difference, gender bias, all that stuff that you can imagine. And I just think that they're flawed assumptions. What people want when they work is clarity of expectation. I want to know exactly what I'm expected to accomplish, the kinds of things that I'm supposed to decide, and the kinds of things that I need to seek approval for, and kind of what resources I have at my disposal, what equipment, what other people I can rely on, you know. And when that's not made clear, then all of that other stuff comes into play. You're not being clear with me because you don't use the same language I use, because you're an old fogey and I'm a young guy.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, you've been around a lot longer than me, and so you know a lot of secret passageways in the building that I don't know. You know shortcuts to get exceptions on bending the rules that I don't know. And all that other stuff comes into play when we're not real clear on exactly the accountability and authority and resources. When those are crystal clear, all the other differences don't matter. The fact is, are millennials different than older people? Are Gen X people different than millennials? Yes. Are men different than women? Yes. Yes, I'm different than you. We're all different from each other. There are no two of us that are the same. So we all have these uniquenesses. That's going to create conflict, but it also can create great opportunity for innovation and collaboration because of the different perspectives we bring to the work. Instead of losing effectiveness because of our differences via conflict, we can gain effectiveness if we're focused on accomplishing the same things, exactly the same things, not generally the same thing, not in that direction, not I'll know it when I see it vagueness, but we're trying to accomplish this exact thing in this exact way, right here, right now, using these resources and these contributors. If we're aiming at the exact same target, we benefit from all those things that make us different.
And if everybody knows those expectations, then they're not trying to fill in that gap of what they're assuming you mean based on how you're saying it.
That's what we have to do, right?
Yeah.
If you can't make clear to me exactly what the target is, then I have to make assumptions. I've got to bring clarity to it because I can't work on something in general and I can't do it in an abstract way. I've got to bring specificity and concreteness to my activity. And if you don't make that clear for me, I've got to create my own clarity. That means I've got all these assumptions, I've got misinterpretations, and I've got a different set of connotations for what you've assigned than you intended. And when your expectation of me is not understood in a common way, then we'll do all kinds of stupid stuff. We'll work at cross purposes, we'll have duplication of effort. I thought I was supposed to do that, here you're doing it. And all kinds of conflict arises when that lack of clarity exists. And that's really the hardest transition that we have, moving from doing the work to managing the work. You know, we've been conditioned since we were little kids to solve the problem, do the work, get the reward, do the work, get the grade, right? Get the pat on the back. And so when you manage, that conditioning has to be broken down, because now you're no longer accountable just for executing the work. Now you're accountable for planning the work, managing the work of others, how they contribute, how they interact, how they apply resources. You've got all these other challenges that have nothing to do with doing the technical work, right? You know, I know how to drive a grader, but that's not going to help me plan for my company, right? It's a different set of skills and abilities to manage other people. And what's required is that you be clear not about how to do the work, but what the work must be and what it must accomplish. And that's just a different perspective.
Yeah.
Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, no.
Clarity?
No, that's definitely helpful. I think that provides some good insight. Appreciate your time.
Excellent. Thanks, Lucas.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Our next guest is Erin Aldridge, and she is one of our leaders in the federal group. Erin, the rules of the road are for you to introduce yourself.
Okay.
Tell us what you do, and then Kirk Hardcastle, which I believe you've met before.
I have.
You will be able to ask him your leadership question, and then he'll give you a good answer.
All right. My name is Erin Aldridge. I am a senior project manager in our federal group. I'm responsible for ops management of both our joint ventures and our federal projects.
Awesome.
All right, so my question is that I recently moved from a doer role to an operational management role where I'm supporting the doers. It's been a challenge for me to give up the control and allow these project managers to do things their own way. I struggle with when to intervene and when to allow them to figure it out on their own. What advice can you give me?
That's a tough one. It sucks to be you. No, that's not the answer.
Okay, Aaron, thanks for
Yeah, all right.
Good. I think that's the challenge we all face, right? Because that's how we get into management. We demonstrate proficiency and excellence in the conduct of the work, and somebody looks at us and says, "You're so good at doing that work. You ought to be managing people doing that work." But those functional roles are completely different. The skills in it, there's a great book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it basically is, the title is the concept of the whole book. The skills and abilities required to do the work well aren't the same as the skills required to manage the work well. They're not even comparable. It's a completely different area of specialization. So our tendency, given that we don't have any formal training in planning the work, thinking about strategy, thinking about long-term outcomes, because we don't have a lot of formal training in that regard, the tendency is to drop back down to the level of the work and start contributing in the work again. But we get in everybody else's way when we do that. It's not our function, it's not our role, it's not our responsibility. So we cross over boundaries and we get in people's way. And the only way I know not to do that is discipline. Every time you feel that temptation, which is 20 times a day, what I try to do,
At a minimum.
yeah. I mean, what I have found really helpful is I ask myself, instead of, you know what, rather than assign this to somebody else, it'll be quicker and easier if I just do it myself. In fact, I'll probably do it better, right? We all have this managerial ego, when in fact we're a little too far away from the actual day-to-day work to do it as well as somebody else might. So what I ask myself when I feel that temptation is, who could I grow by assigning this? Because once you get into management, you've got two fundamental accountabilities: get great business results and grow and develop people. And we ignore that second one. We think training them on the skills required to do the work is the only way to grow them. But in fact, assigning them increasingly challenging and complex work is a better way to grow them. It's more than just fundamental skills training. It helps them be bigger people, take on bigger roles and responsibilities, and make greater contributions to the company. So we end up getting that second fundamental responsibility accomplished too. We get better business results using fewer resources. So, I coach a lot of people who struggle with this thing, and, we all do every day. And just asking yourself the question, who could I grow? Who could I grow? Who could I grow? We're usually not the best contributor to the work once we're managing the work. Resources often require that we do step into the circle and contribute to the work as a peer, and that's okay when it's absolutely necessary, but it isn't necessary anywhere nearly as often as we think it is. It simply is not. And we underutilize the people who report to us. And I'll tell you what, if we pigeonhole people and we fail to grow them effectively, they get better and better and better. Human beings are cool, and they learn and they grow and they develop and they get better. And what was hard for me yesterday is easy for me today. And if we fail to challenge them more and more, they disengage, they unplug, and they just do it by rote, and they just go through the motions and they start phoning it in because it's not challenging anymore. And the fun comes from learning and growing, right?
Awesome.
Does that help?
Yes, a little bit. I just have to step back.
So do you recognize any of the things he's talking about with some of our interactions?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
In terms of
Inside the work and
yeah.
In terms of how many times he messes it up?
Yeah, exactly. In terms of how many times I get my nose in the business it shouldn't be getting. No, I learned that from Kirk to figure out how I can help you grow. For example, earlier this week we were working on the whiteboard.
Yep.
And I wasn't telling you how to do it or what to do, but I was asking you to let's think about the bigger picture for a little bit, right? So
That's one other thing that helps with that too. When you think they're doing it a little bit wrong, that doesn't mean you always have to intervene. What I try to figure out is, will it still accomplish the outcome? And if it still will accomplish the outcome, I try to get them to get feedback from their peers on how to improve their ability instead of it coming from me. Because if it comes from me, it sounds like a commandment. So when I've got to get in there and work as a peer with them because of short resources, I need to know what role I'm in. Am I in the boss role or am I in the peer role? And they need to know it too, because otherwise everything I say, if they think I'm in the boss role, coming in and rolling up my sleeves to help with the work, they'll genuflect, and everything I say, they'll obey, right? Because they think I'm the boss. So I make sure they know right here in this work, I'm not the boss. I'm just one of us chickens. I'm just helping with the work, right? And so you guys are the experts here. I take direction from you, and let's move on down the road.
Yep. I go through that with certain people, Kyle, Eric, where they ask me, are you giving direction or are you just contributing to the conversation? And I got to catch myself to not be giving commandments. So excellent feedback.
Yep.
Any
No.
other questions?
No, thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Aaron.
it.
Thanks for coming on.
Yes.
Okay, welcome, Brock. Brock, Kirk Hardcastle. I don't know that you guys have
Hello.
met
Hey,
before.
Kirk.
Go ahead.
So, Brock, the ground rules of the podcast today are quick introduction of yourself, and then ask Kirk a real life question or something that you want some feedback on.
Sure.
And he'll rapid fire give it to you.
I love that. Thank you.
All
First off, Brock Simmons. I'm the manager of learning development here at GBA. And I've been in leadership development for a number of years. One question I have is about that I've seen that it has turned out successful in the past, and I don't know how it rolls out here. One of the terms that I use, the answer is always in the room. What's your take on that? How do you see that playing out today in our current economy and in this company?
That's an interesting idea. I've never heard it phrased quite that way, but I built a course a few years ago on innovation. And one of the things that I found is that all the research indicates that the more diverse any group is in their perspectives and experience, the more innovation generally comes out of a group facing any challenge. And what we tend to do is when we have a problem before us is we bring all of the people familiar with the problem from the same department, from the same industry, from the same division, from the same geography. We bring all the people that we think know it the best, when in fact, those groups systematically innovate worse than groups where people with the reasons are their limitations are common across all of them. They share the same assumptions. They have the same set of information from which to work and think. And the creativity that comes out of groups like that with the same limited scope is never as much as the creativity that derives from a group that's far more diverse with not the same assumptions. There's a funny story. PG&E, the Pacific Gas and Electric Company, they're up in the Sierras or Cascade Mountains, and they were having a problem with power outages. Ice would form on the power lines, and the lines would break. And so there'd be these massive outages. And so they were sending linemen up the poles to shake the ice off the lines, right? And these guys are sliding off, falling, some dying. They're getting lawsuits. It was tragic, and it was a PR nightmare for the company. So they had a brainstorming series of meetings, and they brought people in, and they happen to have this one junior guy in the room who was brand new to the company, and they're making whiteboard suggestions. There are no wrong answers, anything, just wide open brainstorming. And this guy goes, I know what we do. Bears like to climb trees. Why don't we just have bears climb up the poles and it'll shake the ice off the lines? And they go, what? Boo! Get out of here. That's the stupidest idea. How would you even get the bear to climb the pole? Well, I don't know. Bears like honey. What if we put honey on the top of the pole and the bear would climb up and shake the line? Boo! Shut up. This is the stupidest suggestion. There are no wrong answers, I know, but that is a wrong answer. How would you even get the honey up there? Well, you send the linemen up and they put it up. So now they're falling off. Now they're going to do it with one hand and that's going to work better? No. Boo. Okay, well, what if we just flew our helicopters over and lowered it down on a line and then we could attach it? Boo, go home. You're fired. They wanted him out of the room. You're distracting us. This is a real problem. We need to be serious. And this one guy who had served in Vietnam or somewhere said, whoa, hold on. Have you guys ever been under the downdraft of a helicopter? You can hardly keep your clothes on. It's so powerful. We've got these search and rescue helicopters that are idle 90% of the time. Whenever there's an ice storm, wait till the storm abates and fly the helicopters over the lines and it'll blow the ice off the lines. And that's exactly what they did. So that notion that the answer is always in the room, that exemplifies it perfectly. Sometimes the most innovative solutions come from the most unexpected sources. You never know when somebody's stupid question might trigger something brilliant in somebody else's mind, right? And that's why diverse groups work so much better. And you're right. Because of our own egos, once we get management ranks, we think we're supposed to be the answer person because that's what got us there, right? And no, you're not supposed to know the answers. You're supposed to know the right questions.
I go out of my way on a daily basis to make as few decisions as I have to. That way I let everybody else in the room make the decisions because they're probably closer to it and understand the problem better than I do anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Or even if they don't share the same assumptions.
True.
Which can limit how creatively we think.
As you know, my assumptions are very narrow. I have a very narrow focus on things. I'm narrow-minded.
Yeah, it's a personal limitation.
Brock, thank you so much for joining us. That was a great question.
Thank you.
And a fantastic story about bears. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Welcome, Sydney. Welcome to
Hello.
our podcast.
Good to be here.
How is it from being in front of the camera now instead of behind the camera?
I kind of like it behind the camera a little bit more. It kind of feels a little bit more intimidating on this side. So
since you already know the program, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Sydney Borstelman. I'm the communication specialist here at GBA. So I help support any internal and external communications. I run our social media accounts. I help with all of our podcasts. I help create project features, thought leadership pieces, just help whenever anyone needs it. Yeah.
And you keep me out of trouble on social media.
Yes.
She does all my social media reviews before they go out because that way I don't say something silly. So
Yeah, I have to get into the mind of Josh before I post something.
It's a dangerous place to be. Okay, so what's your question?
So as a 24-year-old and new to the adult world and new to the job, area, what steps should I take to position myself for a potential leadership role in the future?
That's a good one.
Thank you.
Surround yourself with greatness in all directions, not just in the people that support you or your peer group, but also the people that you report to and the people that you don't report to. What I try to do is try to align my thinking with other successful people above me, even if I don't have any direct reason to interact with them. I'll just create casual conversations and ask them questions about their career path. And I'll learn all kinds of stuff doing that. Little things that they learned along the way that were critical learning events and what they took away from them. It takes 12 to 15 years once we get our first management job for us to get really good at it, if we're lucky. And most of us don't ever make it.
5 more years.
So you can learn a lot vicariously by talking to people about what their greatest learning moments were. What was the critical thing that you learned as you were entering management that you think levered you up? And when you ask questions like that of people, it does two things. it lets them tell you their lesson, and you can sort of file it away. So if you encounter a similar situation later, you've got a resource. But it also lets them see that you're sort of an inspired thinker with aspirations to go elsewhere. So when promotion opportunities do open up anywhere, you'll come to mind.
Awesome. So ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you.
Thanks,
Sure.
Yeah.
So that concludes our first video episode of Leader to Leader. And Kirk, thank you so much for your insight, for your wisdom.
Thanks.
I learn so much from you every time we get together and talk. And I sincerely appreciate you coming on and being the guinea pig for video.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. So our next episode will be out in the next few months. Thank you.